My name is Mira Halston, 30 years old. When my sister announced her engagement, I was genuinely happy for her, the way you root for a team that rarely practices but somehow still believes in championships. We weren't best friends, more like family business partners. She called when she needed something, usually money, and I said yes too often to be healthy. Weddings, though, are supposed to change people. I told her I'd help however I could. She smiled like the sun had come up on schedule and said she already knew I would. The first big ask arrived as a text, not even a call. Can you send $7,000 for the venue deposit? We'll pay you back after the wedding gifts. Promise. No breakdown, no context, just the number, $7,000. I wired it that afternoon and told myself it was a gift, not a loan. Gifts don't keep ledgers. Deep down, I knew the ledger would keep me. Silence followed the transfer. Not a thank you, not a photo of the venue, not even a screenshot of a confirmation email. 3 days later, a single heart emoji drifted in like someone flicking a crumb off their plate. I didn't press it. I convinced myself I'd be looped in soon. Dresses, seating chart, playlists, glow of inclusion. My phone stayed quiet. The announcement came, just not to me, or in our family chat. It was Instagram Live. I tapped in because the notification caught me mid-laundry. She stood in a white rehearsal dress, hair sprayed into perfection, the fiancé pouring champagne behind her like an extra who'd landed a line. Fully paid, he said to the comments flying past. All possible because of our hard work and the help of real family who believes in us, she added, smiling into the screen like it was church. Real family. I watched the praise stack up. Flower emojis, role model, princess energy. The word real echoed like someone closing a door from the other side. After the stream ended, I posted one comment beneath her highlight reel, a single chess pawn emoji. It survived 3 minutes before deletion. 6 minutes later, knocking detonated across my door like a SWAT raid. She came in still in heels, makeup baked, the dress making a whispering noise every time she moved. What was that? She said, voice flat as a blade. Not hello, not thank you, just jurisdiction. I didn't answer. I didn't owe her a map to a feeling she'd paved over. You're trying to embarrass me, she said, louder. You always make everything about you. The word always was the match. We'd been quiet for years to keep the peace. I felt something older than pride burn its way to the surface. We shoved each other. It wasn't cinematic. No slow motion, no shattered vases, just a clumsy tangle of wrists and breath and anger. Her shoe came off and thumped against the baseboard. She grabbed my sleeve. I told her to get out. She did, swearing she'd never speak to me again. I didn't feel angry. I felt done. The calls arrived that night. Mom, then Dad. I already knew the script she'd fed them. They sounded tugged into a mess they couldn't name. Voices careful, patient. I told them the truth. The $7,000, the live, the pawn. No one yelled. Mom said maybe we should cool off and talk as a family soon. I said okay and meant no, because a truth I'd sidestepped finally set itself down on my chest. This wasn't about money. This was about placement. In her life, I had none unless I was useful. I wasn't a sister. I was a piece on her board. Pieces can move. 2 days after the fight, I stopped playing nice. I didn't post. I didn't beg. I didn't draft a speech in notes. I started pulling strings quietly, precisely. The venue was first. That $7,000 wasn't a free-floating donation. It was a booking in my name because she couldn't qualify. I called the coordinator, verified the contract number, and canceled. The woman was apologetic about the non-refundable policy. That's fine, I said. I'm not asking for the money back. She paused, confused by a sentence that didn't want refunds, just erasure. The photographer next. My signature, my retainer. I withdrew it and signed the cancellation. The DJ released. Rentals released. The best part was how quiet it all was. It's strange how much noise you can remove from a life by withdrawing the scaffolding no one admitted you were holding. I didn't tell her. I wanted her to find out the way I did, publicly, and too late to pretend she hadn't already decided who counted and who didn't. I kept my phone on silent, ignored her texts as they shifted keys, sweetness, sarcasm, threats. Ignored aunts who used voice notes like sermons. Ignored dads, let's not ruin the weekend. I was waiting for the call that wasn't theater. It came from the fiancé. He sounded newly aware of gravity. Hey, the DJ just called to confirm they're canceled? Do you know anything about... I canceled, I said. Silence stretched until I could hear the room he was in. Why? You should talk to your bride, I said, and ended the call. 10 minutes later, the hallway outside my apartment turned into an echo chamber. No makeup, no heels this time, just rage and a sweatshirt. She didn't cross the threshold. You destroyed my wedding, she said, the words carefully chosen to make me the verb. I stopped paying for your illusion. My voice surprised me, low, flat, a road with lines newly painted. It was built on a lie, on me. I'm done financing your delusion. For a second she faltered, then found the old rhythm. You're bitter, lonely, jealous, punishing me because I have something you don't. I almost laughed. I'd rather be single forever than build a life on guilt. She stepped forward and shoved me. It happened fast. She pushed. I stepped back. She slipped on the threshold and caught herself. That little stagger snapped a string in both of us. Get out, I said. She didn't argue. She fled. My phone lit like a burning field. Dad, then Mom, then both together at my door the next morning. They sat at my kitchen table with their church voices on. We're family, Dad said. Families don't abandon each other over money. I let them talk until the room ran out of air. Then I laid down the last 5 years like cards. The rent I covered without receipts, the credit card I cleared while she looked for work, the groceries I stocked because I didn't wait for her to ask, the deposits I fronted, the birthdays she posted as proof of abundance that was, by design, mine. They stared at the pile. Mom cried. Dad rubbed his face. Just let the wedding happen, he said finally, for our sake. It's never the last thing, I said. It's the latest thing. They didn't have an answer. They looked older in my kitchen than they had in my childhood. That night, I turned my phone face down and let the quiet deepen into something that felt like structure. Ethan texted to check in, then came by with dinner and the kind of silence that holds. He didn't tell me I was right or brave or justified. He just sat on the floor with his back against the couch and watched me breathe. Later, as I brushed my teeth, a story from Lena, Ethan's ex, floated up in my periphery. Jealous people can't stand to see you shine. A photo of crystals on a windowsill. I blocked her and didn't tell him. Not secrecy, just hygiene. Some echoes don't deserve rooms. I slept badly, but not from doubt. The body needs time to adjust to new walls. 3 more days crawled past. Hers trying to rebook with cards that declined. Vendors that remembered the tone of my voice and chose mercy over chaos. Mine going to work, answering emails, drinking water, letting myself be ordinary. The rent came due on her end. A text pinged. Short this month just until after the wedding, promise. The sentence that always turns out to be a season. I didn't open it. By midweek, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years wanted weather reports. She'd told one cousin the venue flooded, another that the photographer ghosted. She forgot to keep her lies consistent, but they all shared one detail. Fault belonged elsewhere. My favorite was the whisper that I'd had a breakdown. A tidy little story people can pass around like cake. 2 days before the wedding, she called 6 times in a row. I didn't pick up. Her fiancé left a message that sounded like someone learning the shape of pleading for the first time. We just need to talk. I deleted it. Saturday came, the day she had reserved for becoming a myth. I turned off notifications, made coffee, and stayed home. Around noon, my cousin Jenna texted, "At the venue, gates locked, no staff. What's going on?" Other messages tumbled over each other. Confused guests, missing bride, no answers. Someone said she'd posted that I was in a psychiatric ward. I put my phone face down and looked at the light on my kitchen floor. It had that winter honesty that makes everything look like itself. By evening, my father stood in my living room doorway alone. He didn't look angry. He looked old. He sat without asking, and for the first time in my life, didn't defend anyone. He asked, "Do you think we failed her?" The question landed in me like a key. Loving someone doesn't mean covering for them, I told him. Letting her take without consequence wasn't kindness. It was permission. She's been living off permission her whole life. He nodded, the way people nod when a sentence builds a bridge they didn't know they needed. When he left, the quiet felt heavier, like weather gathering over a field. Phones make storms seem far away. Hearts know when it's about to rain. The night my father asked if they'd failed her, the question stayed in the room after he left, sitting where he'd been like an outline in dust. I washed a single cup, dried it, and set it on the rack like proof that small, finished things still existed. My phone pulsed in the other room, the screen lighting the wall with the rhythm of a heartbeat I didn't trust. I let it blink out. The next morning arrived gray and undecided. I made coffee and opened my email. The way you open a door you already know is empty. Vendor confirmations of cancellations stacked like receipts. "We're sorry to lose your business," they wrote to me. The name on the contracts, the scaffolding she never acknowledged. The DJ's assistant added a note. "If you need a letter explaining our side to family, we understand." I didn't need letters. I needed quiet. By noon, the family thread had mutated into a rumor factory. One aunt posted a blurry selfie from the locked venue gates with a caption about mysterious flooding. A cousin I hadn't seen since high school messaged to ask if I was seeking help and whether I needed rides to appointments. I stared at that one, thumb hovering over reply. Then I put the phone face down on the table and watched the steam from my mug become nothing. Let the stories breed in the dark. Truth doesn't fight, it waits. At 3, the doorbell rang. I knew the cadence before I stood. My mother's 2 quick taps, pause, third for emphasis. She was alone, coat unbuttoned, hair gathered like she'd run her hands through it too many times. She didn't sit. "Your father told me what you said," she began, voice aiming for steady. Permission, consequences, all that. Tears stood in her eyes like props waiting on their cue. "We just need peace." "You mean quiet," I said, "so you don't have to listen to what happened." She flinched. "I mean peace," she insisted, and for a second I saw the girl she'd been, the one who learned that keeping everyone comfortable passes for love in certain rooms. Just help your sister get through this weekend. For our sake, then we'll talk about everything. "It's never then," I said softly. "It's always later, and later keeps eating now." Her mouth trembled. "She's your sister." "She is," I said. "Not my investor, not my employer, not my client." I stepped aside so she could see the neatness of my space, the way the light sat on the floor like a calm animal. "I'm not wrecking anything anymore, Mom. I'm just refusing to build it." She looked around as if the room might argue for her. When it didn't, she nodded once, more to herself than to me. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." She left with her coat half buttoned, and I shut the door gently so it wouldn't feel like a slam in my own chest. Ethan texted. "Breathe check." I sent him a photo of the coffee mug and the static afternoon. He called anyway. "I'm outside," he said, and a minute later he was on my couch with takeout stir-fry and those disposable chopsticks that splinter the first time you separate them. We ate without attempting to fix anything. "Lena posted about energy thieves, Haishan," he said after a while, eyes apologetic. I blocked her. I shrugged. "Echoes," I said. "Let them die." He nodded, and for a long time we just listened to the neighbors above us move furniture or ideas around. 2 days stretched like gum. My sister tried every door she'd once pried open with charm. The rental company remembered my calm, logistical tone and declined to uncancel. The photographer's assistant sent, "Wishing you well in this transition." Transition. Polite words are such good bandages. Meanwhile, my phone vibrated with relatives trying on different dresses for the same lie. Flood, bankruptcy, viral stomach bug wiping out the catering staff. In each version, responsibility was a guest who'd lost the address. On Friday afternoon, my sister texted me for the first time without threats. "Short on rent, just for a week. Can you spot me? Promise I'll pay after gifts." The muscle memory to open, to soften, to rescue stirred in me like an old injury. I breathed. I put the phone on airplane mode and stood at the window until I remembered whose life the street belonged to. Saturday, the wedding day, arrived with cloud cover that flattened everything. Like a stage manager dimming lights on a set that never finished building. I turned off notifications. I poured coffee. Somewhere across town, gates were locked and guests were confused, and group chats were canceling carpools in real time. Someone left me a voicemail whispering that I'd checked myself in. I deleted it without listening to the end. That afternoon, my father stood in my doorway with a question about failure and love and what it cost to stop pretending. I answered the only way I knew how. Permission isn't kindness. It's fuel. He nodded like he'd finally learned a language he'd always been expected to speak. After he left, I ran a bath hot enough to tell me if I could still feel. I soaked until the water cooled and the skin on my shins went red and honest. When I got out, evening had slipped into the apartment and sat patient, like it didn't need me to name it. I made tea and forced myself to eat something bland and true. Ethan texted a single dot, our shorthand for, "I'm here if you want me." I sent back a comma, "Not yet, but don't go far." At midnight, my phone woke with one sharp buzz, a private number. I let it ring out. It buzzed again. I let it go. On the third try, I picked up and didn't speak. Breathing. Then my sister's voice, thready, smaller. "I think I ruined my life," she said into the dark. There was no accusation in it, no attempt to cast me as a villain, so she could be the damsel, just a statement of architecture. "He left," she added, and I pictured the fiancé packing with theatrical efficiency, the way some people rehearse leaving before they've arrived. "Everyone hates me," she said. "You don't need an audience for the truth," I said, and the words sounded colder than I intended. "You need a plan." Silence stretched, then, very softly, "Can you help me?" The old hook thrown into the old water. "Not with money," I said, "with steps." "Steps," she repeated, as if the syllable were foreign. "Okay." In the background, I heard a faucet run, then cut off. The apartment she'd curated for photo solves its own image when it's quiet. "Okay," she said again, like a person practicing a word until it fits. At 2 a.m, I hung up and lay awake while the city's tired engines stitched whatever fabric night is made from. I imagined a list on a legal pad. What I owe, how I'll fix it. I imagined her hand shaking over numbers. I didn't imagine apologies. Those come last, if they come at all. By dawn, the sky outside had turned the color of first drafts. I made coffee and showered, the routine I used to mistake for control. I was buttoning my shirt when my phone rang again, the tone I keep for family. I almost didn't pick up. Then I did. My father's voice was wrong. "Mira," he said, and in the space after my name was a sound I hadn't heard from him since I was 9 and fell off the swing set, the breath before panic finds words. "You need to come to the hospital. It's your mother." Everything in me went still. The kettle clicked off by itself. The bathroom fan hummed on, not knowing the room had changed its shape. "What happened?" I asked, but my voice didn't sound like mine. "Doctors said stress arrhythmia." She collapsed. He was trying to keep the sentences orderly, the way he sorted screws by size in the garage on Saturdays. "They're monitoring her overnight. She's stable." Stable is the kind of word you hold with both hands, because you're afraid it will fall through your fingers. "I'm coming," I said, already moving, keys in my palm, like a prayer I didn't know the words to. I grabbed a sweater from the back of a chair and went out into the hallway, the air there cooler, cleaner, like a reprimand. On the way down the stairs, I texted Ethan. "Hospital, Mom, arrhythmia, I'm going." He replied before the elevator doors opened. "I'm on my way." Streetlight, night shift city, the hum of other people's emergencies passing in the opposite lane. I drove without the radio. The silence a map I realized I had to learn to read quickly. At a red light, I glanced at my phone. One new message from my sister. "Where are you? Is she okay?" It was the first question she'd asked about someone other than herself in months. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, because the answer would require a version of us we hadn't built yet. At the hospital, the lights were the same cruel white they always are, bleaching nuance from faces. I found my father near a vending machine, his hands empty. He looked at me as if the shape of me could fix the shape of the night. We didn't hug like in movies. We stood shoulder to shoulder and let 5 quiet breaths happen. Then we walked to a room where wires made a meadow over my mother's chest, and in the middle of all that science, her face looked very human and very small. She opened her eyes when I came in. "I just want peace," she whispered, mouth dry, voice thin. The word didn't sound like quiet this time. It sounded like rest. I know, I said, and took her hand, because some sentences need bodies. Behind me, footsteps. My sister slipped into the room looking like a day after a storm, hair damp, with whatever she couldn't hold back anymore. She didn't look at me. She kissed Mom's forehead and sat in the chair across from mine and folded her hands as if they were new and she was trying to be gentle with them. No one spoke. For once, silence wasn't a weapon or a wall. It was a shelter. Tomorrow, my father said finally, in a voice that made tomorrow feel fragile. We sit down, just us. We figure it out. I didn't answer, not yet. In that room, answers felt like noise. Outside the window, morning began to make promises it has no legal obligation to keep. I watched the light try, and I let it. By morning, the hospital had that exhausted quiet that only comes after a night full of alarms. Machines hummed softly. Nurses whispered in the hallways. The kind of stillness that makes every word feel like a choice. Mom was sleeping, her heartbeat steady under the monitor's gentle beeps. Dad sat slumped in the corner chair, half asleep, half waiting. I stood by the window, watching the first sunlight spill across the parking lot, thinking about all the small things that had led us here. It started with a $7,000 check. Now it was a hospital bill and a family hanging by a thread. The door creaked open and my sister stepped in, still in yesterday's clothes. No makeup, no mask. Her eyes were swollen and she held a half-empty coffee cup like it was a lifeline. She didn't look at me, just walked to Mom's side and brushed her hair off her forehead. She's okay, I said quietly. My sister nodded. Dad texted. For a few minutes, we just stood there. No accusations, no stories, just silence. Then she exhaled, slow and shaking. I called off the engagement, she said. The words were so quiet I almost didn't catch them. Dad stirred in the corner but didn't wake. I called him last night, she went on. He said he couldn't deal with me anymore, said I live in a fantasy world, that I treat people like they're disposable. Her voice broke, but she didn't cry. Not yet. And he's right. She sank into the chair next to the bed and put her face in her hands. I messed up everything. I used you. I used everyone. I thought if I kept pretending long enough, it would turn into something real. There was no performance in her voice this time, just exhaustion. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I felt something closer to recognition. The difference between regret and change was still a question mark, but it was the first real question she'd asked herself in a long time. Mom's going to be fine, I said. That's what matters today. She nodded, still staring at the floor. I know. When Mom was discharged the next afternoon, she looked fragile but lighter, like someone who'd been given a second chance she didn't want to waste. Dad insisted on driving her home, and I followed in my car. My sister drove separately, slower, as if every red light was a chance to breathe. When we got home, the house was too clean, too quiet, the kind of quiet that demands new rules. Dad made tea while Mom settled on the couch. I thought we'd all scatter to our corners again, but my father surprised me. Tomorrow morning, he said, looking between us. We sit down. No phones, no pretending, just talk. He didn't say please, he didn't have to. The next morning, the four of us sat around the kitchen table, the same table where we used to do homework, where my sister once told me she'd be a designer, then a model, then an influencer, whatever dream paid fastest. This time she came in with a notebook and a pen, no jewelry, no armor, just paper. She placed it in the center of the table and pushed it toward me. On the first page, she had drawn 2 columns in shaky handwriting. What I owe, how I'll fix it. Underneath, she listed everything, every dollar, every vendor, every broken promise. I skimmed down the page. $7,000 venue deposit, $1,200 photographer cancellation, $890 dress payment, $300 credit card late fee, gas money, groceries, favors, all of it. At the bottom, a single line in small letters. I want to be someone you can actually be proud of someday, but I know I don't deserve your help unless I fix this myself. The words sat there like they'd been waiting years to exist. I looked up at her. You actually wrote it all down? She gave a half shrug. If I don't see it, I'll pretend it's not real. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for the cup in front of her. That's a good start, she said softly. Dad just nodded. I took a breath. I'll help you. But not like before. I'm not paying for your life. I'll help you build it. I'll keep you accountable. You handle the rest. She nodded quickly, relief flashing across her face. That's fair. It wasn't a cinematic moment. No hugs, no tears. Just a table full of people finally tired enough to be honest. The next few days blurred together in something that looked almost like peace. Mom rested upstairs. Dad spent more time home than he had in years. My sister moved into the guest room, quietly unpacking boxes that had once been full of wedding decor. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found her scribbling in a notebook, bills spread out around her like puzzle pieces. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Budgeting," she said, glancing up with a small smile. Turns out it's not as glamorous as Instagram makes it look. Her laugh was small, but it was real. That night, she came to my door holding a stack of papers. "Job applications," she said. "A bakery downtown is hiring. It's not much, but I think I need to start somewhere simple." "You think?" I teased lightly. She rolled her eyes, but it was the good kind, the familiar kind that didn't hurt anymore. 2 weeks later, Mom had her follow-up appointment. "All clear," the doctor said. "Just take it slow." When we left the hospital, she asked if we could stop for ice cream like we used to when we were kids. We did. Windows down, Fleetwood Mac, humming through the old car speakers. She looked out the window, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "I think we're all going to be okay." I glanced at my sister in the rearview mirror. She wasn't on her phone. She was just staring at the sky, like it was the first time she'd seen it without needing to post about it. And for the first time in a long time, I believed Mom might be right. But peace doesn't stay still. A few nights later, I found my sister in the laundry room, sitting on the floor, crying quietly. She didn't notice me at first, just kept scrolling through her phone. Then she held it out to me. Her ex-fiance's social media page was open. New photos. A woman I didn't recognize. His hand on her knee. She didn't speak, just passed me the phone. "I'm sorry," I said softly. She wiped her face. "No, it's okay." I loved him because he didn't know who I really was. I think that's why I chased that wedding so hard. If I stopped moving, someone would see through me. It wasn't self-pity, it was self-awareness. I sat beside her on the floor, both of us leaning against the dryer. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Some silences heal better than words. By the end of the week, she'd started her job at the bakery. She came home smelling like cinnamon and sugar, hair messy, smile soft. "It's not glamorous," she said one evening, hanging up her apron, "but it's mine." I smiled. "That's how real life usually starts." She nodded. "For the first time, I think I like it." That night, when the house went quiet, I opened my drawer and pulled out the notebook she'd left on the kitchen table. At the bottom of her list, she'd added one new line. "Oh, Amira, $300. First repayment coming soon." I closed the notebook gently. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a pawn. I felt like a sister again. By early autumn, the air had changed. The mornings carried that soft chill that makes you slow down without realizing it. Leaves began to gather in the corners of our yard, and the world seemed quieter, simpler. Like someone had finally turned the volume down on our lives. Mom was getting stronger every day. She took short walks around the block, humming old songs under her breath, and Dad started coming home earlier just to keep her company in the evenings. Our house, for the first time in years, sounded like itself again. My sister, Clara, kept her word. She was up every morning before sunrise, leaving for the bakery in an oversized hoodie and sneakers that had seen better days. She came home tired but different, lighter, grounded. The first week, she complained about her feet. The second week, about the smell of yeast that clung to her clothes. By the third, she started telling funny stories about the customers who came in every day. "It's strange," she said one night over dinner. "I used to think work like this was beneath me. Now I think it's saving me." Mom smiled. Hard work has a way of fixing what pride breaks. Clara nodded, quietly taking that in. I watched her that night as she cleared the dishes without being asked. She moved slower, gentler, as if every action had weight now. She wasn't performing. She was rebuilding. A few days later, I walked into the kitchen to find her hunched over the table, a pencil tucked behind her ear and a spreadsheet open on her laptop. "What are you doing?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "Budgeting," she said, chewing on the end of the pencil. "Turns out, if you actually add things up before you buy them, it hurts less later." I laughed. "Revolutionary concept." She pointed the pencil at me. "Don't mock the reformed." I leaned closer. "Guess how proud I am right now." She smiled, small and real. "Guess how broke I am right now." 2 weeks later, she handed me an envelope over breakfast. It was creased at the corners and folded twice. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a check for $300. In the memo line, she'd written, "First repayment." I looked up. "You don't have to rush this." She shook her head. "I do. I have to prove to myself that I can." I didn't cash it. I kept it in my desk drawer under a candle stub and a stack of old letters. Every time I opened that drawer, I saw it. Small proof that change wasn't a promise this time, it was progress. One evening, I came home to find her crying again. Not the kind that breaks furniture, but the quiet kind that builds understanding. She was sitting in the laundry room, phone face down beside her. Without asking, I sat next to her. After a while, she whispered, "He's engaged." I didn't need to ask who. I waited. She finally said, "I guess it's easier for him to move on when he doesn't have to see the mess he left behind." I hesitated, then asked, "Do you still love him?" She thought for a long time before answering. "No, I just miss who I was pretending to be when I was with him." That hit deeper than she knew. Because for years, she'd built her world out of performance, self-worth measured in borrowed things. Now she was learning to live without a stage. I didn't tell her it would get better. I just reached over and squeezed her hand. Sometimes comfort isn't a promise, it's just presence. Weeks turned into months. The bakery job stuck. She started bringing home leftover bread for Mom to freeze, and sometimes she'd sneak cinnamon rolls into my lunch bag before I left for work. Little gestures, quiet reparations. Then one morning, she walked into the kitchen with an announcement. "I'm thinking about having another wedding." I froze mid-sip of coffee. "Excuse me?" She laughed at my face. "Not that kind of wedding, a different one." She sat down across from me, eyes bright. "I want to have a wedding with myself." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm serious," she said, and for once she wasn't being dramatic. "A small celebration. Just me, a couple of friends, Mom, Dad, you. No fiancé, no audience, just a promise. To myself this time." I didn't laugh, I didn't tease, I just said, "That actually sounds kind of perfect." The day of her wedding to herself was nothing like the one she'd planned months ago. There were no white chairs, no champagne towers, no curated hashtags. Just a backyard rented from one of her friends, a wooden table, 2 candles, and a thrifted white sundress that cost $49. Only 6 of us were there: Mom, Dad, me, and 2 of her oldest friends from high school. No one else. She stood barefoot on the grass, holding a folded piece of paper that shook slightly in her hands. She read her vows quietly, her voice breaking halfway through. "I vow to stop apologizing for being myself. I vow to stop using love as a way to escape responsibility. I vow to be kind to the people who stayed and to finally forgive the person I was when I didn't know better." It wasn't poetic, it wasn't rehearsed, but it was true. When she finished, everyone clapped softly, not because it was expected, but because it felt right. Then we ate potluck. Mom brought lemon bars, Dad grilled burgers, one friend made pasta salad no one really liked, and I brought a cake from the bakery where she worked. It wasn't a wedding, it was a beginning. After everyone left, she came to me with another envelope. "Don't say no," she said quickly. I raised an eyebrow. "More repayment?" She smiled. "A little more this time. I'm getting better at saving." I took it, tucked it into my purse, and didn't say anything. I wasn't keeping score anymore, but I could tell she was finally learning how to. That night we sat in the living room. Just family. Soft music, lemon bars still warm on the counter. Mom was wrapped in her blanket, Dad half asleep in his chair. My sister leaned against me on the couch, quiet. "I used to think you were cold," she said suddenly. I looked down at her. "But now I get it," she said. "You weren't cold. You were just the only one willing to deal with reality." I smiled, not because it felt good to be right, but because it finally made sense. For the first time in years, our house wasn't full of pretense or guilt or noise. It was just full. Mom looked up from her blanket and said softly, "I'm proud of both of you." No speeches, no apologies, just peace. The quiet, steady kind that stays. And for the first time, it felt like the war was truly over. Winter arrived slow and kind that year. The morning smelled like cinnamon and frost, and the light came through the windows softer, like it finally forgave the house for what it had held. Mom's heartbeat was steady. Dad laughed more. And my sister, Clara, was still working 6 days a week at the bakery, coming home with flour on her face and stories that didn't end in disaster. She was building a life, one shift at a time. One Saturday, she came home carrying a small cardboard box. She dropped it on the table and grinned. "Guess what's inside?" I raised an eyebrow. "A carb-based surprise?" "Better," she said, opening it dramatically. Inside was a small framed certificate from her bakery, a promotion. She was officially the new assistant manager. "They gave me a raise," she said, smiling like a kid. "It's not much, but I earned it." Mom teared up. Dad clapped like she'd just won an award. I just said, "You really did." And for once, it didn't sound like surprise. It sounded like pride. A few days later, she handed me another envelope. She was nervous this time. "It's the last one," she said. "The rest of what I owed you." I hesitated. "You don't have to keep paying me back." She shook her head. "Yes, I do. I need to close the loop." Inside was a check for the remaining balance, every dollar from the list she'd written months ago. The handwriting on the memo line read simply, "Paid in full." I didn't cry, but something in me settled, like a door finally clicked shut in the best way possible. "You did it," I said quietly. She smiled. "No," she said. "We did. You just stopped saving me long enough for me to learn how to save myself." Weeks later, she started planning something small, a gathering, not a party. No one knew what it was for. When the invitations came, they were handwritten and simple. Dinner at home. No gifts, no excuses. I expected maybe a belated birthday or some quiet thank you. But when we arrived that night, candles flickered on the table, and she was wearing the same thrifted white sundress from her self-wedding. "What's going on?" I asked, half laughing. She gestured for us to sit. "This isn't another wedding," she said. "It's a renewal." She took out that same folded paper of vows, the one she'd read barefoot in the yard months ago, and placed it in the center of the table. "Tonight isn't about promising to be different," she said. "It's about keeping the promise." Then she looked at each of us, Mom, Dad, and me. "I've spent my whole life trying to perform love," she said. "Now I just want to live it." No one clapped. No one needed to. The silence was enough. After dinner, I helped her clean up. The dishes were stacked high, the air smelled like lemon and garlic, and the house buzzed with something I hadn't felt since childhood, peace that didn't need permission. She leaned on the counter beside me, drying her hands on a towel. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I used to think success was about everyone liking me." "And now?" I asked. "Now I just want to like the person I'm with every day." She smiled at me. "That includes me." I nodded. "Then I think you've made it." Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found her sitting on the porch with a mug of tea, staring at the stars. I sat next to her. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked. "The wedding that never happened?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not because I miss it." She nodded. "Me neither. I think about the mess and the noise and how hard I tried to look happy. I don't ever want to live like that again." "You won't," I said. She smiled. "I know." The wind brushed against the trees. The night was clear, quiet, certain. Months later, she moved into her own small apartment across town. A one-bedroom with uneven floors, peeling wallpaper, and a window that looked out over a noisy street. But it was hers. She sent me a photo the day she got the keys, her standing in an empty room, barefoot, holding a houseplant instead of a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Finally standing on my own floor." I stared at the picture for a long time before replying, "Looks good on you." A few weeks after that, I stopped by after work. She had framed the photo from her self-wedding and hung it near the door. Underneath it, she'd written a quote on a piece of paper. "Sometimes peace looks nothing like what you planned." She caught me looking at it and smiled. "I think I'm going to be okay, Mira." I smiled back. "You already are." That night, driving home, I thought about everything that had happened. Every fight, every silence, every bill, every tear. For so long, I thought the story was about punishment and payback. But it wasn't. It was about balance. It was about learning where love ends and self-respect begins. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I opened my drawer and saw the 2 checks she'd given me. The first for $300, the last labeled paid in full. I still hadn't cashed either. I didn't need the money. I just needed the reminder. That peace isn't bought. It's earned. One apology, one boundary, one quiet morning at a time. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a pawn in someone else's story. I felt like a person with her own.